All right, so thank you so much, AGZA, American Green Zone Alliance, for being an awesome partner and sponsor to this podcast, Roots Down, a Regenerative AF podcast. Really respect the work that you guys do in creating a just transition from gasoline to electric in the landscaping industry. We not only appreciate you being a good partner of Roots Down, but we really appreciate you being a great partner to the earth and helping steward new behaviors that can lead us towards a good, clean energy transition, especially in the landscaping industry where we need it most. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate all the awesome partnership.
So welcome Thomas Billups from Billups Homes to Roots Down, a Regenerative AF podcast. I'm really excited to have you on the show. And we started working together a few years ago. And I think this conversation's about, getting builders in the fight for a more climate just urban area. You guys are responsible for doing a lot of earth moving and a lot of building. And I think like the building and just in general, anything to do with construction has a big impact.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So tell people who you are, what you do, and just give a brief intro to the audience about Thomas Billups. Who is Thomas Billups?
Yeah, so I'm Thomas Billups. My company's Billups Homes, and we build homes, and our goal is to really kind of do work in those areas that have been really overlooked. We build high quality, high performing, sustainable homes. And we try to do it as affordably as we can. Affordability is a moving target at this point, but that's what our goal is, and we're trying to do it in those areas. I mean, I can't come from the big builder community. I worked for the largest private builder in the country for a long time. I don't want to put names out there because I don't want to get in trouble. But
whatever you're comfortable with.
Seriously. Yeah, but I saw some things in that world. And I saw some huge gaps as well. And so that's why I kind of came out on my own. And
where'd you start? So where did you start? How many years ago did you start building homes?
Man, you're trying to date me.
I'm dating.
So I started in the military. I'm an engineer by trade. I graduated with an engineering degree from Auburn University. And I went to the military. And that was kind of I started in school with internships and that kind of thing. But in the military, I was building and, I'm a Marine, so it was building and demolition, So that was kind of my introduction into building. When I left the military, I wanted to get back into the building. I had to kind of take a sidestep and do some other things for a while for family reasons. And then I moved here to Atlanta and got back into the building space, and I started building homes, actual home building in 2006, so almost 20 years ago. So,
okay.
Yeah. But before that, I was building military stuff, hangars and maintenance facilities and that kind of stuff.
So when you got into the industry in 2006,
home building, yeah.
What did it look like?
It was crazy because, that was right building up to the crash.
Oh God, yeah, that was right there.
Yeah, and it's funny because I had a file, an actual old paper file where on my lunch break or whatever, I'd read these stories about the industry and how it was the Wild West and that there was just too much stuff going on that just didn't make sense, Yeah.
Yeah, so much glut.
And I still have that file somewhere today, but I'm like reading these articles like, man, I see the bubble inflating and I know it's going to burst. And, what do? At that point, I'm young and I got no control over any of that. So I just kind of kept my nose down but I talked to people. I pointed out what I thought was wrong, but, you can't do anything about it. So, yeah.
Was there any conversation back in 06 to 08 about sustainability or?
Yeah. So the conversation about sustainability, and even today, it's still the same. It's always focused on the building itself, not the total built environment. So we build a great home. I feel like I've been building great homes, great envelopes and great systems and that kind of thing, Energy Star, and you can do all that stuff. But then you look outside the window on that home that you're building and there's trash all over the place. You're bringing in all this stuff. And I mean, there's thousands of dollars of reusable material that could be recycled, repurposed, what have you, going in the trash. And then on the back end, the landscaping, it's like, it's almost an afterthought, you know?
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I was saying as we were coming in that, you know, I kind of got into this because I'm getting lazy, you know? I grew up, I had a neighbor next door, Mr. Dixon. I mean, he had you know, we were in a kind of lower income community, but, you know, we lived in a house, you know, these were people who were buying the first home, that kind of thing. Mr. Dixon had like the immaculate yard. He'd come home every day and I mean, at least probably 3 times a week, he'd spend an hour or so. I mean, his grass was like you know, stay off my lawn, you know.
Okay.
And he wasn't that way from a negative standpoint. He's proud, you know, homeowner and that kind of thing. So I wanted to be Mr. Dixon. And that's what I was doing, you know, and I was spending the time in the yard and I realized, man, this sucked.
Yeah.
And it was like, I started doing other stuff. Like one year I planted watermelon. I had no idea what I was doing, but I'm like, man, I got to start planting something that's going to give something back instead of just me busting my ass in the yard. Just for it to be quote unquote pretty. You know?
Someone doesn't tell you that, like when you buy a house, they don't sell the house to you and say, you know, you're going to spend every waking Saturday in the yard for 6 hours. You're going to waste 1 day a week. You're going to get in arguments with your spouse over who does the yard work, how much yard work needs to be done. I mean, that's what it was a point of contention in my marriage for sure. It was like, let's go out and do yard work. I'm like, I don't want to do it. That's because, you know, I farmed for a career. So like the idea of going out and doing yard work all day long without actually bringing back any kale or doing whatever, it's really, really kind of miserable. Yeah. I don't know how they sell that piece to people, to home buyers at all.
It's the American dream, you know. That's what it is. The same way that I grew up with it with Mr. Dixon next door. You know, it's just what I thought that's what we were supposed to do.
It's really,
and that's what most people think. That's what they're supposed to do.
I think that's very true. Yeah. Very true. Keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah. And then, you know, kind of how we met. I'm a member of the Home Builder Association. I'm actually the president of the Metro East chapter, and we had an event where we did a tour of the cottages on Vaughn, and I was like, "What the heck is this?" You know, I had no idea that even existed. That was even a possibility. That there could be a landscape that was productive and that actually, you know, fed the people who maintained it, and you know, gave back something. And so that's when I reached out. Like, I mean, I was excited. That was the one. I don't remember. I mean, I remember the community is cool, but I build houses. I've been building houses for a long time. You know, I've seen houses. The one thing I remember from that was the landscaping. I mean, that was the biggest takeaway from that whole whole tour. And so I don't know how I tracked you down, but somehow I did.
You did.
And we had coffee at Refuge Coffee there in Clarkston, and yeah, that's how we connected. But I mean, I'd been looking for that, and I didn't even know what I was looking for, but I knew I needed something different, you know. Right. So I was doing everything I can. You know, I switched over to battery and electric, like in 2016, 17, and so I've been trying to do this, kind of stumbling through on my own, and really kind of finding you guys was a great thing.
So I think the audience want to know, you are an EarthCraft builder. So tell the audience a little bit about that, and maybe even like shamelessly plug South Face. They're a great partner. Worked with them for years, and love that work. And I love that it's the answer to, like, most people don't really know that there is another answer to LEED. Like, which I think EarthCraft is supposed to be way better. So tell us about EarthCraft. Yeah,
and in Atlanta, everybody knows that that's the answer to LEED, because EarthCraft is actually a product of South Face and the Greater Atlanta Home Builders Association. So the GAHPA partnered with South Face to come up with a program, because LEED and you know, other programs that we had looked at were kind of, you know, there wasn't any kind of support there to kind of show us how to do it. And so we built EarthCraft with South Face. And basically it's a program where essentially you're trained. First of all, you have to go through a training course to learn how to be and learn how to do some of this stuff. And basically you're taught the things that you need to do to build a more sustainable, higher performing home. And, it starts with, the envelope and building a tight building, and then just putting systems that actually work in a home. It's crazy how much stuff they sell. There's a bunch of stuff, and we talk about it all the time, that you can go at Home Depot and it's on the shelf, but it's not even legal. You can't even pass an inspection if you put some of the stuff in your home.
Oh,
it's like,
wow.
Yeah.
Give us an example.
Like a dryer vent or a bath fan. The bath fan that you put in and you turn it on and you can't hear yourself think. Who the hell is going to use that? Nobody.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So, you have moisture issues in the home and that kind of thing, but they still sell it. It's still on the shelf. It's still probably the number one seller. And for another, $25, $30, you could have something that actually works and that you can turn on and you can barely hear it. So, you can get that steam out of your bathroom and that moisture out of your home. But yeah, people just don't know. So that's one of the things that EarthCraft kind of teaches you and kind of shows you that, hey, this is how you actually build a home that people are going to use properly, and it's going to help. There's so many things that we need to be doing, but just one of those things that we can just a couple of drips in the sustainability.
And so it checks a lot of boxes in the sustainability world. So the reason I brought you to that, and then we'll talk more about like what our passion is.
Yeah.
And I find it funny, and there's no diss to Southface and no diss to EarthCraft Homes, but my philosophy, my idea is that each homeowner buys a piece of property that becomes their little slice of paradise. That becomes the place where they can learn about proper home ownership, home stewardship, and earth stewardship. And I find it really interesting. And you and I have shared the grievances that it's just, let's build a beautiful home, sustainable as AF, and then let's throw some sod down and then walk away.
Yep.
Job done. Here we are. And there's no afterthought. There's no creativity there on let's actually plant some, native species. Let's lower the grass footprint so the people are not mowing their yard for 6 hours on a Saturday. Let's do more natural. Let's do more soil building qualities. So if they want to have a garden, they can have a garden. Let's plant fruit trees and pollinator. We were able to work on a project together, and it was kind of before I stepped away to go work with Commissioner Ted Terry's office. It was right during that time, because my partner wanted to be a landscaper.
Yeah.
And like Trace was like, I want to be a landscaper. I'm like, and that's not where Roots Down was going. It was going more like podcasting, thought leadership.
Yeah, I know.
So it's so yeah, just tell me. I'm curious to know, like, from your perspective. I say hats off to you to getting in the fight, because I know that you want to move the needle on that really bad, and I do too. I think it's an education. It's a missed opportunity. Why is it such an afterthought? Even in the EarthCraft, why is it such an afterthought?
And it's funny because we were in an EarthCraft meeting at the Home Builder Association, and we were going through the changes and the updates to the EarthCraft program. And the EarthCraft program manager, Amelia, she was kind of running us through that. And she mentioned landscape, and it was almost like just really glazed over it really quickly.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, I got some, that's actually, there's an option. There are options to do that. And it was just there was no interest almost. The way that it was treated was like, nobody does that. So we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
What the hell? And then I guess shortly after that, you and I met, and I invited you to a meeting because I was like, man, that's a component of EarthCraft that doesn't get talked about. EarthCraft has badges, and one of the badges talks about the outdoor, kind of the overall built environment. But very few people. There are some communities like Serenbe that address it. Obviously, Cottages on Vaughn, but most people have no clue.
Well, because they look at it. One of the frustrations I have, Thomas, with this movement. And the idea is that they look at it like it's cute. It's not, right? They're like, oh, you planting some flowers, you're planting some, it's cute. My whole philosophy, and I've gotten into a pretty big conversation with Southface about this, and they're doing a big clean energy plan for DeKalb County. Gentle plug there. Love that work, but my philosophy is that if we cannot use these little opportunities, like in the building world, where we're teaching people about how to steward good soil, it becomes a problem for all of us.
Yeah.
It becomes a huge problem. If we lose all of our soil and we don't actually implement good soil practices, we're not going to be able to grow anything in our soil. Again, if there is a catastrophe where we have to grow, in the urban centers, we have to grow food as homeowners, we're never going to be able to do it because our soil is so dead. But, and also let's talk about the biggest problem for me as a homeowner was, and at most of my houses it happened, was flooding issues. A lot of that could be mitigated by good soil practices.
Yeah.
And I just don't understand why we're not, I don't think it's all the emphasis. It shouldn't be 30% of the emphasis on home ownership or building better. But for God's sake, it should be at least 10 or 15%.
Yeah.
And I think right now it's like 1%. It's an afterthought because it's cute, but I don't know. How do we get them to value this more? Like, how do we get to move the needle? I know you want to do it. Yeah. I want to do it. We haven't been extremely successful. You have. You've been doing it on your own, but like, I just haven't had a chance to be able to really get them to move the needle on it.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest thing, and going back to Southface, I don't want to feel like we're treading on Southface.
Oh no, not at all.
They're serving builders, and just like any other service organization, you got to give the people what they want. Builders just aren't interested because and I think that it's an ignorance thing. We've got to break down. We've got to keep talking about it. I think that's the key. That's why I invited you to the meeting.
Yeah.
That's why I invited you to the meeting that we're going to do in May or June in a couple months.
I need it on my calendar.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm gonna forget.
Yeah. Because there's and that meeting is and EarthCraft as well. That's a room full of builders that I think if they see it and they can touch it, feel it, smell it, taste it, in this case, I think that they will get on board, and it's one of those things though, you got to touch them continuously over time until they see it. That's that 10% though. That's that small percentage of the builders that are even interested in EarthCraft and interested in talking sustainability, because most builders just want to do, what they need to do to sell a home and make their money.
Well, that's it. That's exactly it. And we're not, so that's the thing, like we're beating the drum and saying like, oh, sustainability and like regenerative earth care. And they're like, well, let's just sell the damn home. Let the homeowner worry about that. Right. I do think, and I talk to developers, a lot about this. I'm like, I think this is a good way to sell a home. And it's, in fact, like people talk about it as the landscape being like the first thing a homeowner sees. But I'm of the proponent of, I think the education, there's a missing part of education of that. When we're talking about what we're talking about, they immediately think like there's going to be a barefoot homeowner out there managing a front yard farm, right? And I mean, trust me, I know, like this is like, and then we have some problem people in our society. And I know I work with DeKalb County code enforcement, and like some homeowners just don't want to mow their grass at all. And I'm like, well, you can't. That's not what we're talking about here. You can't just not mow your grass and call it an ecosystem. Yeah. It's going to be a little bit more intentional than that, like for sure. Yeah. But that's what they see. So they think it's going to be a hot mess, right?
And it's funny because before I met you, I built in Decatur for years. My last community that I built before I left the corporate world was in Decatur, and I kept seeing these signs as I drove around Decatur. The grow don't mow signs, and I'm like,
oh God.
At first I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And then I kept seeing it, and I started to see some that were doing it right, and it's like, okay, I get it. But then actually, right next door to our community is a house, the community that I built. There's a house that the Friends School owns, and they rent it, and it was one of those that the people just didn't want to friggin' mow their grass.
Oh God.
And
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And so, that's a fear. And I think the other piece of it is that you've got to make it attainable, and you got to make it I won't say affordable, but it can't be more expensive. Otherwise, nobody's going to do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
great example. I'm finishing a home. I'm trying to get a CO on right now, and I put together a landscape package based off of some of the stuff that I've learned from you guys. And my landscaper's like, I mean, it's a month. And he's like, we can't get these plants, you know. And I think that it's through the regular landscape channels, a lot of these, and it's nothing difficult. The stuff that we've used.
What plants? I'm curious.
I mean, it was, and maybe it's the time of the year. I don't know.
It's probably the time of year.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's a part of the problem.
Because they've done it before me on another home. Started in the spring.
That's part of the problem. We get it's availability of the plant. So like it's easier for them just to go to Home Depot or a big box store and get whatever is available at that point in time and just throw it in.
And they're a huge landscaper, so they've got distribution in the landscape world. And so when they were telling me, I mean, it's like a week goes by, 2 weeks goes by. It's like usually I call for landscaping and it's there a week later in the old stuff or in the regular stuff that everybody's doing. But yeah, it was like a month, and I'm like, dude, just bring out the freaking tree, my sod and some mulch. That's all I need for inspection. But that's what I had to do because they were like, hey, we're still waiting on these plants. And I think it's the time of the year because it's the last couple of months. But yeah, and then, you know, I got a quote for a landscape on a home that I closed earlier this year, and it was freaking expensive. I mean, it was way more expensive than the landscape. But I basically did the landscape through my old landscaper, and Trace did the design.
Okay, so the sustainable one was cheaper.
No, I mean, it wasn't any more expensive.
Okay,
but the company that I got to quote it, and I won't name names.
No.
But their quote was like double, and I'm like, man, I can't do that. So
yeah,
yeah,
that kind of makes me sad. At the nursery level, so let's talk about that. It's availability, and it is very seasonal. So like you guys are building homes throughout the year, right? So if the nursery's stock doesn't match up with when you guys are wanting to get an inspection on a house, that becomes very difficult for you. I think that needs to change. It needs to be like, okay, during the winter, your varieties are this, this, and this, and then maybe giving the homeowner a good idea of like what can you plant in the spring that you can't plant in the fall, or whenever we built the house, or if we're finishing in the spring, you could plant something in the fall. But there is no education, so it's just like then you had to revert back to planting freaking sod and whatever other BS trees that you could find. It's just really kind of sad because
no, and I didn't do that. I mean, you still got to plant some sod.
Yeah,
so I did some sod, but I basically I had the conversation what's available, and we found some things that worked. But it's that education piece, and that's the critical piece for the builders, because I've been trying to do this for a couple of years and I still don't know what the hell I'm doing. And so, we've got to, and that's one of the reasons why I had to come to the HPA, because we do education series throughout the year. Builders need to kind of know what a more sustainable landscape looks like,
Yeah.
And right now we don't. And then obviously the landscapers, our landscapers, they're going to do what they're doing for everybody else, and the easiest thing is what we've always done,
Yeah.
We'll do it like we always done it.
Yeah.
And we've got to get those guys on board, because there's not enough landscapers out there who even know what the hell I'm talking about when I say, hey, this is what I want this landscape to look like. I gotta completely paint the picture for them.
I think though, what I think we need is simple protocols. And I think I do think like thought leadership and education, and I will tell you a little bit about more. Like I'm launching a new product called Climate Coaching next year, and it really is to help bridge those gaps and bring all of those players together. I've been working on this for a couple years, and I think the climate coaching philosophy is bringing people together to showcase what is possible if we all are kind of moving the needle at the same time. And a lot of that is like resources, right? So you just talked about a few resources there are huge gaps in, like the landscaping education. You want to do this, but you only have really only Trace to do this for you, right? You've got a couple others. You got shades of green.
Yeah.
You got a couple. Some of them are more expensive than others. And if you want electric services, you got Lawn Capital, but it is very few. Like the resources are not as rich, right? But I think the education is really, really important. And I think continuing to educate you guys as builders, but also knowing that we don't have to go full in. Like we, I would talk on this podcast a lot about maybe we should outline, maybe something we should work on. Maybe we should work on this with Trace. It's like, landscape number 1 or A, landscape A is more sustainable. It's 15% more sustainable. The grass footprint's this, the trees are this, and then all the way up to, the gold package. But I think a lot of people are immediately looking at like the gold package and they're getting scared away because I could tell you the first thing you want to do to really scare a builder into producing a landscape like this is tell them what the gold package is like, tell them there's going to be no grass and no sod.
Yep.
And they're immediately going to turn off.
Yep.
I know I've had those conversations with them.
Yeah, because like I said, I've still got to have sod. I mean, and because I've got to sell the house.
Yeah.
And
right.
people that we're selling to don't understand it, so we can't just snatch out all the sod and say, hey, come buy this house, because they're going to keep driving that curb appeal. Curb appeal today looks like what we've always done. It looks like some sod, looks like some seasonal colors, some annuals.
Yeah.
That are going to be dead in a few months or as soon as it gets.
It's a boring corporate landscape.
And we've got to start to change it. And you're exactly right. You're not going to get there going all in.
Yeah.
Right away. You've got to ease us let us stick our toe into it.
Well, because if you're asking for these if you're like, like you're talking to a builder and you're like, hey, I've got this list of 20 varietals of plants that like, and Trace and I have talked about this, even like plants that are at like these specialty nurseries, they're going to be extremely expensive, but the availability is not going to be there.
Yeah.
So if you give that builder that plant list and they try to go find that, they're going to be like, no, the hell with this. Like, I'm going back to I think you really have to like make it easier on you guys. Like, so that's the thing. I want to make sure that we are not disparaging builders, and for you rising to the surface and being this like beautiful beacon of hope for other builders, a good example, and want to continue working with you. I think our work started back just a few years ago, but I really think now that we're ready to do this on the bigger stage, I think like even with this podcast, we could tell more builders that, hey guys, if you want to do a little better, and if you want a better climate story, right? If you want to like a better, more sustainable story when you sell your house, just do a little better, which I think is so important. It's so important.
Yeah. And, I think that, and I'm small. I mean, I'm trying to get to 10 homes a year, and, but as I'm growing, I'm going to drag you along. And, just like with BS and Beer, and I mean, I go to a big national kind of almost like a BS and Beer called Building Science Summer Camp up in Massachusetts. I mean, those are the kind of platforms, because nobody's talking about this, and these are like the smartest.
I'd love to go.
Yeah, these are like the smartest people in the world. It's invitation only, so we got to kind of get there.
Yeah, let's go.
But, these are the smartest people in this industry. And even the smartest people in this industry really aren't talking about the outdoor piece of the built environment.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, we just come in and clear cut it and bulldoze everything and build a generally very good house, those of us who are trying to, but the outdoor environment's an afterthought. So we've got to change that.
We've got to change that.
So
curious to know what, have you checked back in with, I know we did a house with Habitat for Humanity. I think we saw that family.
We've done 2.
You've done 2?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
we've done 2.
Promise me next, any of the ones you guys do, actually, we'd love to go in and maybe this year when spring comes up, film it, come out and maybe interview some of the homeowners. We'd love to know their stories. And again, that's what I'm saying is we're missing that element, the storytelling, and that's really where I really feel like I'm led to be able to be in this position, because I think more people need to be talking about that. But so are they enjoying their landscapes? Are they not knowing how to use them?
I think that there's
the latter.
I think we missed the education piece with them, because again, most of these homeowners are coming from rentals. Most of them have never had a landscape before. And the homes that we did, they were in legacy neighborhoods where, homes burned down or whatever. And so they're big lots and they're still sod and grass.
Yeah.
So it's not the most enjoyable experience, but yeah, I think there's definitely some room to. We've got one that we're getting ready to start in a month. Or, matter of fact, it's January. So
Is this in DeKalb County?
It's in Stone Mountain, yeah.
It's in Stone Mountain.
DeKalb.
Your new district commissioner for that, for Stone Mountain? Is it?
I want to say that's Ladina Bolton.
Ladina Bolton.
So yeah, I mean it's in her super district, but.
Well, we should bring this up. We should set up coffee and talk more about this, because I think I have a philosophy, I have an idea that I think will help you guys out. So partnering with South Face and DeKalb County, what I want to do is educate homeowners on how to. I think the education needs to be continual. It's like, and we have talked with UGA Extension. They're interested. They're very interested, but I think it needs to be a continual yearly education. Yep. And I know the incoming CEO, Miss Lorraine Cochran-Johnson, is going to be a huge fan, huge supporter of these kinds of initiatives. So we need to put this in front of her and say, hey, because I want DeKalb County to be a thought leader. I've lived in this county for 20 something years, and I'm still going out to homeowners who are like, this is like every library thing we do, every Cottage on Vaughn thing we do, the number one question we get is, how do we do this at home? How do we do this at home?
Yeah.
The missing education is like, how do we educate the homeowners?
Yep.
So we have got to provide a platform for them, because you're right. It pains me to know, it's the reality of it. Like, I wanted to say on that Grow Don't Mow campaign, like shame on me. That was I'm looking at the third wall, because it was a terrible, the idea in my head was so much more beautiful than what it actually did. But what it meant was a bunch of people grabbing these signs, like, no, I ain't mowing my damn yard ever again. Like, to hell with mowing. And they grab my signs. I'm like, no, that's not what I mean. So that caused a lot of issues citywide and countywide. And I got a lot of phone calls. Yep. Still to this day, I get an occasional there's a Grow Don't Mow sign out there, groaning. So I had to change my whole Roots Down logo and everything. But I do think, going back to that, I think thought leadership is so important. Yeah. And I think if we can get the county to start realizing that they should own a little bit of that piece of responsibility to teach the homeowners on how to use their yards. But it does pain me that these poor people got planted a yard. I'm sure it looks good.
It definitely looked good when we started, and I haven't seen it. It's been.
Is it Trace maintaining it?
No, I don't think so. I think that basically the homeowners are, it's kind of on the homeowners to maintain.
What I think would be really
But I think the education piece is critical. And I think that part of that, it starts with the builder, though. I mean, because you or Trace can't go around every homeowner. I mean, as we scale this thing, it's on the builders. And like with EarthCraft, we have to produce a homeowner's manual that tells them how to use their home. I think we need the same thing with the outdoor piece.
And that wasn't done.
And that's not done.
Yeah, that is a big
Yeah, and as you're sitting here talking, I'm thinking there's no homeowner manual for the outdoors.
No.
Or there's no chapter for the outdoors on that.
So tell me, Thomas, how hands-on is the teaching and that teaching and education component? Are you guys actually going out there, or just videos?
No. I mean, we're going out there. And the great thing with Habitat is that the homeowners are responsible for sweat equity, and they have to actually help us build their homes, help us, landscaping's one of the things that most homeowners participate in.
Yeah, right.
And so it's not just, hey, here's a book and, go read it. No, let me show you how to plant it. We'll talk about how to take care of it. So, but we've got to have that piece, because,
yeah, definitely.
Right now it's missing. And like that homeowner manual that I have to produce for every EarthCraft homeowner, it doesn't have any mention of the landscape.
Okay. So I'm having an epiphany. that I want to kind of work out, and I want for the audience to see this process, because my mind works in weird ways. Sometimes I have a hard time even figuring myself out. But so there is a value to what you guys do as far as the homeowner manual, and so there's built in like cost to that, associated to that.
Yeah.
Do you have numbers on that?
You
see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah. And I mean, the funny thing is that, when you do the numbers, as you get into it, the costs are almost a wash. I mean, it doesn't cost me any more to build a home that's more sustainable. Like, for instance, my homes have 2x6 walls, so they get R19 insulation versus 2x4 walls with R13. When you do the math, the cost difference is almost negligible. I mean, you may be talking about, a few $100 over a $200,000 to $500,000, $600,000 investment. What is that? That's negligible. But most people, of course, people are going to say, hey, it's way more expensive because, for one, they don't want to do it, and it's different than what they've always done. But I think it's kind of the same thing where, yeah, there's a cost to it, but I think the cost, for one, first off, the cost is not as great as what people may think initially. Then the other piece is that the value equation of it.
Yeah.
What you're getting from it, the return on investment is so much more. And that's the biggest thing with like an EarthCraft home. You spend that extra, say it's $1,000, you spend that extra $1,000 up front. You're going to save hundreds of dollars every year for 30 or 40. I mean, you'll pay off that $1,000 in a year at the most, and then you're just reaping that extra money, for the life of the.
So how do we bake in the cost of continuing education for the homeowners? Because it's, do you see what I'm saying? Like that would be where we maybe solve some bigger issues. It's like, it should be baked into the cost of the house. And if it was, then you would have a landscaper that would, at the very least, in the beginning, show up every 2 weeks, right? And then show up every eventually show up every month, and maybe every 2 months, maybe quarterly, and give, like
almost women.
And because it takes, people don't really understand what drives me completely crazy. They don't understand. It's not, these yards that we're talking about, like sustainable yards, are not set it and forget it.
Oh yeah.
Like ecosystems, natural ecosystems, they've been so destroyed that we have to manipulate them to grow them back. So like the homeowner, when I remember when, even when I was doing my farm, it took me a long time to understand how ecosystems are built, like how soil is built, what that looks like. That is a big missing gap in education, and it can look like a hairy mess if it's not done right. And that also turns off the HOAs. So there's a whole litany of issues that we're dealing with because that cost isn't baked in from the very beginning. So maybe we should challenge ourselves in 2025 and trying to figure out how we can get that cost on EarthCraft homes. You guys have a manual. How can that cost be associated where there's a landscaper at the very least monthly that comes out that shows the homeowner, hey, this is how you build healthy soil. These are the weeds in your yard. This is what you do. I'm talking about green jobs, like building possibility of like getting, really small landscapers like Trace, into that realm of like being able to educate the homeowners.
Yeah.
I don't know, just a food for thought. It's a 2025 goal, I think, that we can work towards somehow, some way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, I think we opened up this conversation really strong. I think the viewers got a good idea. I think you are an exception to the norm, would you say?
I think today I am, but hopefully not for long.
Yeah, hopefully not for long. It's got to be, the education's got to be there. It's got to be somewhat popular. It's got to be affordable. It's got to be easier to do it. And that's, we just had this conversation earlier. That's why organics changed, right? Because organics became more mainstream.
Yeah.
So I think these ideas are, in 10 years from now, we're going to be like patting ourselves on the back of like, hey, that we were, thought leaders on this journey, and we actually were able to actually move the needle to where it needed to go. I did that way back when with farming, I remember like, doing sustainable farming was not a thing when I first started. It was like gaining popularity, but everyone was like, no, now it's like regenerative agriculture is like massive.
Yeah. And it's, I've been reading and watching things on that, and it's interesting. I just, I'm excited about what we're doing. I know we're just starting it, but I did want to say, and we were talking a little bit earlier, but I appreciate what you're doing. We really need some voices in the room that are based on facts and spreading truth and the good news about sustainability versus some of the misinformation and disinformation that we've been seeing lately. So, man, just keep doing what you're doing. And
I appreciate that. I definitely
do to help.
I appreciate that. We definitely don't need. We have so much bad information out there right now. We just definitely don't need any more junk. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you joining us with the podcast today. Tell the listeners where to find you and what projects you might be working on, and any way to get a hold of you that would be that you feel comfortable with. I don't give your phone number out, obviously, but
no.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. So yeah, I'm again Thomas Billups. Billups is the last name. My website is billupshomes.com. It has all my social on there. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So yeah, feel free to reach out. We're starting 3 new homes, Habitat homes actually in Rockdale Conyers, and I haven't built with them before. So that's going to be my big project for the first quarter, probably first half of the year. So yeah,
great. Well, look forward to working with you in the future, and it's been a pleasure getting to know you more and having you on the podcast. Thank you so much, Thomas. I appreciate it. So this is Jamie. Like and follow Roots Down Regenerative AF podcast, streaming everywhere: Apple, YouTube, Spotify. Make sure to like and subscribe, please. If you guys want to see more content like this, that's how you do it. Is like and subscribe. It's that simple. Happy 2025, y'all, and we'll see you soon.